There's just too much to squeeze in the last nugget, so I'm going to pick up right where we left off. We walked through the base configuration of ePhones and ePhone DNs, getting them registered. We had auto registration enabled, which is how it is by default on all CME voice gateways. And we created the DNs, assigned the DNs, created the ePhones, got phones ringing and tested and all that. Okay, so we left off talking about this mystical button command. Now, why do I say it's mystical? Well, the reason why is because it's just an odd syntax when you are first getting used to it. Not only just saying, the line number and then some identifier, some separator, and then the ePhone DN number. Because our minds a lot of times work in terms of like, okay, I created extension 111. I'm going to assign that to line 1. So we think, okay, 1, colon 111. And we go, oh, no, wait. Yeah, 111 is actually ePhone DN 9. So you see what I mean? It just gets kind of like, bleh, in trying to keep it all straight. But then we start adding things beyond the colon, and now it's just, if it's your first time seeing a show run from a CME router, you're going to go, wow, that's weird. It just takes getting used to. So this is the list of what those separators are. And I tried to boil down that context-sensitive help that you saw when we hit the question mark. Matter of fact, let me bring my prompt back up. When you get into an ePhone, we'll just go under ePhone 1 and do button question mark. You get this context-sensitive help where it gives you examples. I mean, again, great context-sensitive help that you can use on there. These are the main ones. We've got the colon, which we've saw is the normal ring. That's what you'll use for the majority of your assignments. B, which is call waiting beep, but it doesn't ring, versus silent. We actually saw that in the last nugget, where you can assign a completely silent button, where the only way you'll know it's ringing is if you look at it. Most of the time, that's used for a good outbound call sort of thing. This one, the little symbol shake, when it's receiving a call. You know what I mean when I say that. I'm not like shaking my hand. Like if I were to, let me call this. So you see the little, wiggly thing. It says, call from here, but you won't actually hear a ring. Although if you're on the phone, you'll hear in your ear, beep, the little beep letting you know that something's happening there. Feature ring is where it kind of does a little ring. It's a little different ring. Sometimes, managers or assistants like to have that kind of ring, for instance, for a manager calling in. Maybe it's the assistant of a manager, and they want to be able to audibly tell if the manager is calling them versus just receiving a normal call. So we can assign a feature ring to that. Monitor mode allows you to monitor an individual line. So this is really useful for receptionists. A lot of times receptionists have, for instance, the IP phone. Like this is a 79, we'll say 60, where they've got the 6 lines right there, and then you slap a couple extension modules onto that guy, like the, what is it, the 7914, that's the old school one, expansion modules, which adds 14 lines per module to where they can have a whole bunch of digital lines on there. And so they, somebody calls in and says, hey, I need to be transferred to Tom, and they look and they go, oh, sorry, Tom is busy. That's because you had previously configured Tom's phone as a monitor mode. Some people call that BLF, busy lamp field, to where you're able to see the status of somebody's line by using monitor mode. Now, that is often confused. And I would say this is probably, of the list of these are probably the two most confused ones. Monitor versus watch mode. What's the difference? And the context of help doesn't help much, because you look here, you're like, okay, it's a watch line or a monitor line. What's the difference between these two? So what monitor mode does is watch the line. So if I say watch 1006, then it's watching that individual ePhone DN to see if there's status and changes on there to tell you if it's busy. The watch mode watches the entire phone. So for example, maybe 1006 is the primary DN on there, but he also has the 1007, 1008, you see what I mean? All these different lines assigned to this phone. Watch mode can tell if he is using 1007, 1008, and it will show this guy, as long as it's the primary ePhone DN, it'll show him as busy because he is busy. He's on the phone. He's just not using that specific directory number right then. So again, monitor mode, think line. Watch mode, think phone. Big difference between the two. Now, This little chunk of them right here, I'm going to save until we look specifically at overlay. Matter of fact, that's coming up in just a moment when we're talking about shared lines and things like that, because we'll explain those fully right then. But looking at these examples, I mean, you've got a good idea of how this works. You can do it on a line-by-line basis. You can put a whole bunch of button assignments on a single line. Whatever you're used to, that'll work. Okay, so let's dive into that shared line and button overlay concept, and I'll kind of walk you through progressive examples, and maybe we can even set this up on the phones. So, shared line. First off, what is a shared line? It's where you have a couple phones that are sharing a line. I know. Hang on. You can pause if you need to write that down. But that's pretty much it. To where you've got these two phones that have the same line appearance. They're using the same Ephone DN. Now, if you look right here, this is probably the easiest way to configure it. So I can go in and do Ephone DN 10. We'll say dual line setup. Here's the number, and then I go under Ephone 8 and Ephone 9 and assign that same button, in this case, to line 1 of both of them. Matter of fact, let me do that. I'm going to go. I have my IP communicator. Let me bring that up. There we go. And I'm going to access. Oh. Get out. I don't know which ephone I'm in. Ephone 1, and do button. Let's do button 3:1 because that's the Ephone DN assigned to the 7960. Now watch this. I'm going to take my 7960 off hook, and immediately I see on the screen. Now I haven't touched this phone. It's off hook as well. Now that prevents me from using it. You know, I'm trying to. You can see it's like, whoa, kind of a cool effect there. I'm trying to click on it, but it won't go off hook because it's like, sorry, you're Ephone DN. And I know some of you are like, but wait, it's a dual line. That's just not how the dual line works. If it's off hook, that means that Ephone DN is in use and can't be used by somebody else. Now, that may be what you want. So when I say problem, I'll just add the word potential in front of that. Potential problem is that you only get one call per Ephone DN, one active user at a time. So if both of those are using 1010, only one can use it at a time. But the beauty is you get a simultaneous ring. So when somebody calls 110, both of those devices are going to ring, and whoever answers first wins the prize. See what I mean? So that's the idea of the basic shared line. So okay, let's go a little bit further. What if I want to have the shared line, but I want to have both of these people being able to use it at a time? Shoop. Welcome to example number 2. Notice what we're doing is assigning the same number 1010 to two different Ephone DNs. So this is the same exact concept. Remember when we were doing the dial plan? Unless I reverse the order in the series, then when we do the dial plan, we're going to do this. when we did the dial plan early on, we created the duplicate dial plans, and we said, well, if that one's down, it'll fail over to this one. Same kind of thing here. So we've assigned, one button to this guy, one button to this guy, but the problem is now we're using that hunting. Because we've essentially configured a hunt group. The router sees it as a hunt group. And let me bring up my configuration again. I'm going to exit back out here and do dial peer. Remember we did this? Dial peer hunt. Hit the question mark. And now we're going through this to where it's going to say, okay, by default it's 0, which is the longest matching phone number. Well, in this case, they're both 1010, so we're tied there. And then it's going to say, okay, explicit preference. Well, there's no real explicit preference defined, so they're both considered preference 0 on those numbers. Then we'll do the random selection. So that's where I say the problem is the incoming calls randomly distribute, which, again, let me add the word potential. That may be what you want, and you may stop there, but you may want a little more control than that. Okay, so then stepping it to the next level, what if we want a little control on how our calls distribute? Well, what we can do is look at Ephone. Here's our example again, Ephone DN 10 and 11. I've skipped the number assignments because we've seen that now, and we can focus in on just the DNs. So Ephone DN 10 is dual line. We've got number 1010 with preference of 0. So if I assign that to, let's say, phone number 1, so this has got this ephone, and then I assign this to phone number 2, who has this Ephone DN. The way that it'll work is when the incoming call is received, this guy always rings first. Then, if he's busy, it will fail over. Well, and I'll modify what I just said. If he's I'll say really busy, it'll fail over to this guy. So let me put in a usage scenario, and then I'll define what I mean by really busy. This would be useful if maybe you have a dedicated help desk employee, or maybe I'll tell you one of the things I have for a company that I manage is kind of an initial call screener. So I have a guy who's somewhat knowledgeable, technical, who receives all of the initial incoming calls. His main job is to create a ticket in the system and answer some of the "I forgot my password" kind of questions. Well, if he's busy, and I mean really busy, like he's getting too many calls, I can have it fail over to one of the technical engineers. Now, we don't usually want those guys being the front line taking the call, but you get my meaning, right? You kind of get the concepts there. So this guy, because he's preference 0, will always get the first call. Now, let me add in, what do I mean by really busy? Dual line, right? Dual line supports 2 calls per line. So if you use this configuration, keep in mind that the only reason it's going to fail over to preference 1 is if both lines, well, I mean, it's one line, but both channels, I should say, on that line are currently in use. Now it's going to fail over to phone number 2. Maybe you want that. For example, for my guy that I have screening the initial calls for this company, he can handle 2 calls at a time. He can say, oh, hang on, because the person who's ringing in is just getting hold music. They don't know that his second line's ringing. So he can be like, okay, we'll wrap up, and then he'll jump over to the second call. So that works well for him. If you don't want that, create the Ephone DNs as single line. Then it will automatically roll over as soon as there's one active call. Okay. Now, what's this story? This one right here adds a little bit more by using the hunt stop command. What this does is keep the dual line capabilities, because remember, dual line is more than just how many calls can you receive. Dual line is what allows you to transfer, what allows you to do conference calls, what allows you to make another outgoing call on that same line. So a lot of times you don't want to kill the dual line capabilities, but at the same time you don't want 2 active calls coming in. Maybe this guy, he's a stress maniac, he can't handle it. I only want 1 call. I'm kind of drawing like this mean-looking alien here with fangs, and I don't know where that's coming from. But you only want 1 active call on that phone at a time. This is how you do it. Same thing, number 110, preference 0. So again, ePhone 10 is always getting the first call, but look at what we've done. Hunt stop channel. Hunt stop channel says as soon as you see one channel busy, stop hunting. Don't continue to hunt for the other channel. Now, you notice right after that, I included the command no hunt stop, which sounds like it removed the last commands, but these are actually complementary commands, not contradictory. No hunt stop says, okay, stop hunting when you get to his channel, but don't stop hunting at this phone. See, if we left this guy off of that configuration, then the hunt stop channel would stop the hunting, and it would never hunt over to phone number 2. You see what I'm doing here? Now, this is a good practical example, but I'm using it to add another tool to your tool belt. I don't want you to be like, okay, if I ever have shared, I mean, sure, you can use it in this specific example, but just keep in mind this hunt stop can really control your hunting as you bounce through all your different ePhone DNs. So in this case, we're saying, okay, stop as soon as you use one channel, still allowing this to be dual line, but not receiving 2 active calls, and then fail over to him. So you notice hunt stop channel there, and that's where it ends. We don't add the no hunt stop because we don't want it to try and orbit and find other devices here. And can I add one more thing here? I do want to make sure you guys catch, when I have these preferences right here, preference 0, that is actually the default preference, excuse me, on the ePhone DN. So when you type that in, all ePhone DNs have preference 0 by default. If you go back and do a show run, it won't show up. I just put it there so that we can see it and it makes sense. Okay, so that now leads us into the final piece of these shared lines, which actually moves from the shared line concept into this button overlay concept. Right? So let's go back to the original example. Remember, I said we have one ePhone DN. Right? It was 1010 originally. And we assign that one ePhone DN. It's a dual line configuration, but we assign it to 2 phones. Advantage is I can have both phones ring when I receive an incoming call, which is pretty groovy. But the problem is as soon as somebody answers that phone, the ePhone DN is dead. Like that line can't be used anymore. right? The other phone couldn't lift it up because only one phone can use the ePhone DN at a time. Okay, so here's our scenario. We've got a tech support department, let's just say of 3 phones. And I want all 3 of those phones to have the number 1010 because it's well known in our company. If you need help, pick up your phone, call 1010. We even create a little jingle. You dial 1010 and we will help you. And it's, so that's all marketed. Our users know it. And I want that to ring all of my phones, right? Okay, so I'm thinking back to the original example. So I'm thinking, okay, assign the same ePhone DN to all the phones. No, because it'll ring all the phones then, but only one of them will be used. So I want it to ring all of the phones, but as soon as somebody picks up, I want it to take the call. But now other calls to 1010 will just ring these 2 phones. And then when someone picks up, now you got 2 active people. A call to 1010 will just ring that phone. You see what I mean? With the preference in hunt stop and all that we've been talking so far, if you do create more ePhone DN numbers and assign them, then it's kind of like these guys have their specific positions. And I don't want that. I don't want like this guy always gets the first, this guy always gets the second, and all that kind of stuff. I want them all to be, we're all tech support people, right? We want that call to go to all of them. You get what I'm talking about here, right? Okay, good. So that's where the use for button overlay comes into play. Button overlay allows you to link multiple ePhone DNs to a single line instance using one of these 2 commands, either the O or the C. So let's walk through this. So first off, I've got ePhone DN 10 and ePhone DN 11. Notice they're single line instances that I've created. Preference 0 and preference 1 have been assigned. So I've got, one that is higher priority. Notice the no hunt stop. We're kind of tying all those concepts together into this. Now when I assign them to the phones, I only have 2 phones in this example, but you get the idea. When I assign them to the phones, I do ePhone 8 and ePhone 9, and I do button 1 O, which is overlay, of 10 and 11. What's that do? It literally assigns both of those ePhone DNs to that one line instance. You see where that name comes from, right? Overlays the 2 DNs on top of each other. Same thing on ePhone 9. So what happens? I get an incoming call to 1010. In this case, this guy doesn't exist yet. In this case, both of these phones, ePhone 8 and ePhone 9, ring. Now what's actually ringing is the ePhone DN instance, but it's been assigned to both phones, so both phones are ringing. Now you notice that it says with no call waiting. What's that mean? Well, that means, okay, this guy is the lucky winner. Cha-ching. Hi, thanks for calling our 1010 support line. How can I help you? He's now on the phone. This guy's sitting idle. A second call comes in to 1010. It's now technically, if we were monitoring it, it's technically coming into 11 because this one is seen as busy and no longer in use. So this guy's phone rings because he's also assigned that same instance. Now you notice, and that's why this comes in. You see where this is going, right? This guy's phone does not ring because it sees he's on an active call, and I enabled the button overlay with no call waiting. Okay, so you get the concept then. We've got the C, which allows you to do the button overlay with call waiting. So that way, this guy could get the call. Even though he's on an active call, he can step up and take 2 calls at the same time. Well, this guy sits back and eats his Snickers bar. So that gives you that true shared line concept, even though it's button overlay. Okay, so let me see if I can read some of your minds, because I know some of you have sick minds like myself, and I know I would ask this question. I would say, okay, well, what if you made that dual line? Then what happens? Yeah, don't do it. Okay, I'll just say that. Okay, what really happens if I make this a dual line setup? Then I can use the O separator, which says don't do call waiting, but this one would have call waiting, because it supports 2 active calls at a time. So even though I told it no call waiting, this guy is still getting the second call because it's technically a dual line. So in reality, I could support 3 active calls if I just made one of them a dual line in a button overlay configuration, but that's weird. Don't do it. Make single line instances because it makes more sense in your head, and then it saves the confusion of why am I getting call waiting beeps when I configured this with a no call waiting option. Now I'd like to come back to this slide for just a second, because we've now talked about all of these, including the overlay line with and without call waiting, except for this mystery X. What is the overlay expansion slash rollover? So O and C only work if it's the same line. Just like we saw, you had Ephone DN, 1 and 2, both of them with the number 1010, right? That works great for that overlay mode, overlay line with or without call waiting. This one is if you want to do button overlays with different numbers. Like, for example, maybe you've got a couple phones. It's hard for me to come up with an example for this one, but let's just say, I don't know why I'm seeing things in what I draw today. I'm like, an angry person. But we've got a couple phones that are sitting here, and this guy is 1010, and maybe this guy is 1020, but maybe this guy, maybe they're sales teams, right? And this guy covers for this guy when he's out of the office. Well, what I can do is I can go in and do button 1 will say is Ephone DN, or actually we'll do the X 1, and then we would do comma 2. So essentially this would be his primary number, but it's overlaid with button 2 to where it's 1020, and now 1020 calls can also come into him if he's not busy, if he's not on the phone, that kind of thing. So again, I couldn't see that being used very often, but that's where that one fits. Okay, last thing I want to talk about here, and then we'll wrap up our ePhone discussion. I've got pigeons outside. Be gone. I'm sorry. I just planted winter grass. See, I live in Arizona. It's a desert, and we actually have to plant our grass in the winter in order for it to grow. But we get some beautiful grass all winter long, which is where it's fun to frolic in the grass and in the cool 70-degree weather. But anyway, so I plant this grass, and just my lawn just gets covered with these pigeons that just eat all my grass seed. And I know there's, I put down millions of grass seeds, I'm sure. And the birds probably don't make a dent, but it just bothers me just seeing this flock undoing all of my hard work outside. So I just yell at them from my window and shake my fist. And right now they're all just kind of reconverging back on the grass. So I must look away. So auto registration, we've already seen a little bit of it. I said it's on by default on all CME routers. But what it allows the phones to do is come in and register. Now let's do a little demonstration, shall we? I've got my phone. I've been building its configuration all along, and right about now I feel the need to destroy. So I'm going to type in no Ephone 1. Boom. Configuration is blown away. You see the phone immediately is like, I'm done, I'm out of here, and it resets itself. Now, what it's doing is saying, essentially the call manager said, you have no config, so it came back and said, okay, I'd like to come in, and now I've become Ephone 1 again. This time, it's gone in under the auto-registered state. There's no configuration, and if I were to do a show run, do a section Ephone, even though this guy is showing Ephone 1, there really is no Ephone 1 in the config. It's just sitting there waiting to be taken care of. So let me do this. I'm going to do a show Ephone, and I see that I've got my Ephone 1 sitting right there. Nothing really going on with it, but I can go into telephony service configuration mode and do a no auto reg Ephone. That will actually turn off the auto registration. Now this guy snuck in beforehand, so let's do this. I'm gonna show you the if you're ever sitting at a phone or you're anywhere and you want to reboot a phone, best way to do it is, and it depends on the model and the firmware. Sometimes you can just hit star star pound star star, but a lot of them will just bring up this dial prompt. You don't want that. So we'll hit cancel. Just bring up a menu. Any menu will do. I'll click on this little services menu. And in the meanwhile, I'll hit star star pound star star and reboot that phone. Now I could have done that from the router by doing a restart under the telephony service config mode. But it's just, I wanted to show you that because that is an invaluable thing when you're sitting at the phones. Now you notice when this guy came back up, it's like rejected, denied. I'm not allowed to register in because I've disabled that, as we would expect. Now I can do a show ePhone, and you can see all the individual models of phones underneath there. But you see one of the commands that I can type in is attempted registrations. So if I want to see, if I turn off auto registration, but I still want some of the benefits, like it's very handy for me to be able to see the MAC address of the phones because I like creating the ePhone entries. But auto registration, some of you guys probably have heard me say, anything with auto in Cisco, you ought to not use it, right? So auto registration usually falls under that for me because I don't like them just kind of stealing my ePhone parking slots, and now I have to create ePhone 1 as that one because it got there first and all that. This still allows me to get the same information like, it's this MAC address, it's this device type, here's when it came in and tried to register, so I can go manually create my ePhones with the correct MAC address. So that's one of the useful things. But I know all along some of you might be saying, well, what's the use of auto registration if the phones just come in here and kind of park? I mean, can't you do more? Yes, you can. I can go into the telephony service configuration mode, and first off, let's turn auto registration back on. Turn that back on, and then I'm going to type in auto, hit the question mark, and now we see, there's an auto assign command. So I can type in auto assign and say, here is the DN that I want to start with, and here is the DN that I want to leave off with. Here's 2. We'll say 10 or something like that. What that does is allow me to, well, it's pretty logical, right? You go in and create ePhone DN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and what will happen is as these phones come in, it will automatically assign them in first come, first serve basis. So the first phone that comes in gets ePhone DN 1. Now, this is useful, I would say, in a great greenfield deployment. Like you are just now setting up the office. Nobody has phone number assignments yet. Man, what a great way to create your spreadsheet, right? You just do DN 1 through 100 or however many you're signing out, and all the phones kind of grab them. Now keep in mind there are limitations. One, it's completely random, right? It's whoever gets there first gets those assignments. Let me, while I'm talking, reboot this guy. ** pound ***. I'm typing on my keyboard. So we'll reboot that guy in the meanwhile. So it's random. It's first come, first serve. And what was the other? It's only one line. Essentially they're going to come in, they're going to grab whatever ePhone DN is there first, and then that's the only line they get. So it's not like it's going to do multi-line assignments and it's tiered like that. But you can see as this guy comes back in, he grabbed looks like ePhone DN2 because that was the first unassigned ePhone number. And great stuff. So what do we see, and what do I want you to do with it? We saw kind of the culmination of the CME base configuration, starting with the foundation router config and then getting into the ePhones and ePhone DNs, shared lines, overlay lines, auto-assigning lines. All of those pieces fit together to build the local telephony network. What I want you to do at this point is really just put it all together. I mean, if you've got a lab router, you've got some lab phones that you can play with, great time to start going through that. If not, let's say you are just studying for an exam and you don't have enough money to buy some lab equipment, that's okay. What I would do is start opening Notepad or Notepad++ on Windows, right? And start generating some template configs that you can use for the CME routers. I mean, you don't, sure, it's ideal to have the router so you can test it, you can try it, you can see the results and all that. But I will tell you, when I'm going out to a CME deployment, I don't usually have a router sitting right in front of me to start, and I'm opening Notepad++, and I'm taking base configurations and kind of splicing them together, so when I get on site, I just kind of paste that configuration in there, and I'm good to go. So at this point, I mean, you could generate some base configs, you come up with some shared line scenarios, use some button overlay, and really understand how all those pieces work together. All right, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.